I want you to imagine a specific visual for just a second. It's today, Tuesday, January 27th, 2026, and we're standing on a street corner in downtown Minneapolis. Now, if you've never been to Minnesota in, late January, you have to understand the physical reality of it. The wind chill is something brutal.
Oh, it's a different kind of cold.
50 degrees below zero.
Yeah.
It's that kind of cold that, physically hurts to breathe.
It's the kind of cold where machinery fails, where car batteries just die in minutes.
Exactly. And on these frozen streets in this major American city, you've got two heavily armed military forces facing each other. On one side, you have the Minnesota National Guard. On the other side, you have federal agents, DHS, Border Patrol, these BORTAC units. And here's the thing that makes this just unprecedented in modern history. They are not working together. They are staring each other down.
It is a standoff. And we're not talking about a training exercise here. These are armed forces operating under opposing chains of command. Their orders directly contradict one another.
It looks more like a scene from, a dystopian movie than the nightly news. But this is the reality on the ground in Minneapolis right now. Today, we're doing a deep dive into what everyone is calling the Minneapolis standoff. We really need to understand how on earth we got here.
And to do that, we've combed through a huge stack of sources. We've got reports from The Guardian, Fox News, the Grand Pinnacle Tribune, PBS NewsHour, Times Now World. And we even have, local legislative records from Hennepin County to get the legal perspective on the ground.
So our mission today is to unpack how a single shooting just a few days ago, on January 24th, didn't just spark a protest, but it triggered what legal scholars in our notes are calling a constitutional breakdown.
And that's really the key phrase, isn't it? A breakdown. We're looking at two levels of government, state, and federal that are living in what one source called mutually exclusive realities.
That's a great way to put it.
This isn't just about a policy dispute anymore.
Yeah.
This is about who actually has the legitimate authority, the monopoly on violence, in an American city.
Okay, so let's rewind. To understand why soldiers are facing off in the snow, we have to go back to the spark. Saturday, January 24th, the shooting of Alex Pretti.
Right. And as soon as we touch this event, we immediately hit that wall of mutually exclusive realities because depending on which source you read or which official you listen to, Alex Pretti was two completely different people.
So let's start with narrative A. This is the view coming out of Washington, D.C. We're looking at the reporting from Fox News and the official statements from the Trump administration.
Yeah.
How do they characterize this man?
Well, the language they use is incredibly charged. If you listen to the Department of Homeland Security or, say, White House advisor Stephen Miller, Alex Pretti was a domestic terrorist.
Domestic terrorist.
And a would-be assassin.
Wow. Okay, assassin. That's a very specific term. It implies intent, a plan.
Exactly. It's a specific legal category that, it justifies legal force. The official federal account is that Pretti approached federal officers armed with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun and extra ammo.
President Trump even posted a picture of the weapon online, didn't he?
He did. He called it dangerous and unpredictable.
So the claim from the feds is basically, this guy was there to kill our agents, and we stopped him before he could start a massacre.
That is the claim, almost word for word. DHS stated he intended to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. The narrative is that officers tried to disarm him. He reacted violently, that's the exact phrase, and an agent fired defensive shots.
Out of fear for their lives.
Out of fear for their lives.
Okay, so if you stop right there, if that's all the information you have, it sounds like a clear-cut case of self-defense.
Absolutely.
But then you open the file on narrative B, the view from Minnesota, from the witnesses, from the Pretti family, and it's like a different planet.
It's unrecognizable. First off, who was Alex Pretti to them? He wasn't a terrorist. He was a 37-year-old ICU nurse.
At a VA hospital.
At a VA hospital. He was a veteran himself. His colleagues, his family, they described him as a good man who was just there to bear witness.
Bear witness. That sounds like he was filming, not attacking.
That's what it implies. An independent analysis, really detailed work by groups like Bellingcat and NBC, it suggests that when Pretti was tackled by the agents, he wasn't holding a gun.
What was he holding?
A cell phone.
But hold on, we have to talk about the gun. He did have one, right? The president's tweet wasn't fake.
No, he did. He had a concealed carry permit, which was perfectly legal under Minnesota law. But this is where the forensic details get really, really sticky. This is where the two realities just collide.
Okay.
Witness videos reportedly show him with his empty left hand up, filming with his right hand. Then he gets tackled. He's pinned face down in the snow.
And this is the part of the witness accounts that's just so hard to square with the federal story.
Right. Witnesses and video analysis suggest that an agent removed the gun from his waistband before he was shot.
Wait, walk me through that again. They disarmed him, they took the gun, and then they shot him.
That is what the state authorities and the witnesses are alleging. And the forensics seem to back that up in a really crucial way. The reports say the gun's slide never moved.
Okay, for those of us who aren't firearms experts, and I'm definitely in that group, why is the slide so important?
It's just simple mechanics. On a semi-automatic pistol, when you fire a bullet, the explosion blows the slide back, it ejects the empty shell and loads a new one. If the slide is closed and the chamber is cold, it means the gun wasn't fired. It never discharged.
So the allegation is that he never even fired at them, was disarmed, and was then shot in the back while he was pinned on the ground.
Yes.
There was one detail from the Grand Pinnacle Tribune that, it really stuck with me. It was from an affidavit sworn by a pediatrician who was there.
I know exactly the one you mean. This doctor, she tried to get past the police line to render aid to help him.
And she said in her sworn statement that the agents weren't doing CPR.
No. They were, in her words, counting his bullet wounds.
That is just chilling.
It just speaks to the level of dehumanization, I guess. To the federal agents, based on their briefing, this was a neutralized terrorist. To the locals, this was the execution of a neighborhood nurse.
And there's just no middle ground between those two stories. You can't compromise there.
Yeah.
But this shooting didn't happen in a vacuum, right? Tensions in Minneapolis were already through the roof.
Absolutely. We have to zoom out and look at Operation Metro Surge. This thing launched back on December 1st, 2025. The Trump administration deployed over 2,000 federal agents to the Twin Cities.
2,000, that's a massive number?
It's more than all the local police agencies combined. And we need to be really clear about who these agents are. This isn't just a few ICE officers checking visas. We're talking about BORTAC.
Okay, help us out with the acronyms. What's BORTAC?
It stands for Border Patrol Tactical Unit. You should think of them as the special forces of the Border Patrol. They're the units you deploy to handle, cartel violence in the desert or high-risk hostage situations. They're trained for combat zones, not for urban policing.
So what's the justification? Why send a unit like that into Minneapolis?
The administration's argument, which you see a lot in the Fox News reporting, is that Minneapolis is a sanctuary city. They argue that because local police are barred by a city ordinance from helping ICE, the city has become lawless.
I saw a stat the White House put out, something about a 1,300% increase in assaults on federal officers.
It's a contested number, but yes, that's the number they're using to drive the policy. They believe the local leaders have, quote, lost control to agitators. The administration sees the local non-cooperation not as a policy choice, but as seditionist obstruction.
So they feel they had to step in.
Because the state refused to. On the flip side, of course, the locals see an invading army.
And Alex Pretti wasn't even the first shooting related to this operation.
Not at all. Just a couple weeks before, on January 7th, an agent killed Renee Nicole Good. She was an award-winning poet, a mother. That incident had already put the entire city on a knife's edge.
So when Pretti was killed, the powder keg didn't just explode, the government itself fractured.
That's it. That's the pivot point. This is where we go from civil unrest to a full-blown constitutional crisis.
Because Governor Walz does something here that I don't think we've ever seen this before in modern American history.
No. Usually when a governor calls up the National Guard, it's to help law enforcement.
To back up the police, quell a riot.
Right. But not this time. Governor Walz deployed the Minnesota National Guard to oppose the federal agents.
To oppose them? You mean physically stop them?
Specifically to preserve the crime scene. State officials claim that federal agents were blocking state investigators from even accessing the spot where Pretti died. They said there was a credible risk that evidence, like that gun or body cam footage, would be destroyed.
That's unbelievable. You have the state military protecting a crime scene from the federal police.
And it gets crazier. A federal judge actually sided with the state.
What?
A judge issued a temporary restraining order against the federal forces to keep them from messing with the evidence or blocking the state investigation.
So now we have a legal standoff to go with the physical one.
Precisely. It's a constitutional crisis playing out in real time. You've got two armed groups in one city, and they answer to different leaders. The Guard answers to the governor, the feds answer to the president, and neither one recognizes the other's authority here.
And President Trump did not take this well. I'm looking at the reports about the Insurrection Act.
Yeah, he threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807.
1807. We are dusting off some very, very old laws. What does that act even allow a president to do?
It's basically the nuclear option for domestic disputes. Normally, the military can't act as police on U.S. soil. The Insurrection Act is the exception. It lets the president deploy active duty military
He's an army and the Marines.
to override local control and suppress what he defines as an insurrection. Reports say 1,500 soldiers are already on standby.
So if he does that, what happens to the National Guard that's already on the street?
That is the nightmare scenario. Normally, the Guard would get federalized, meaning the president takes command away from the governor. But what if the governor is using the Guard to enforce a federal court order, that restraining order we mentioned? It gets incredibly murky.
It sounds like a paradox. The president would be ordering the military to stop the Guard from enforcing a judge's order against the president's own agents.
Exactly. We are in completely uncharted waters here. There is no precedent for this.
And all the while, the rhetoric is just pouring gasoline on the fire.
Yeah.
You have Representative Ilhan Omar calling it an execution, an invasion.
And on the other side, you have DHS Secretary Noam and Stephen Miller calling the local government seditionist.
Sedition, that's such a heavy word. It implies treason.
It does. And you don't negotiate with seditionists, and you don't negotiate with invaders. It makes compromise almost impossible.
So while the politicians are trading these legal threats, what's happening to the actual people of Minneapolis? It sounds like a war zone, but frozen solid.
Grim is the word. We mentioned the -50 wind chill, and yet, despite that, there was a general strike. They called it the Day of Truth and Freedom.
People actually went out in that weather.
Tens of thousands. And they've gotten really organized. The sources mention these groups called icebreakers.
Icebreakers.
It's a citizen surveillance network. They're using encrypted apps to track federal movements, but they're also using low-tech solutions.
Like what?
Orange whistles.
Whistles.
It's a simple analog warning system. If you see the feds, you blow the whistle. It alerts the whole neighborhood instantly. No cell network required. It's the kind of thing you read about happening in, authoritarian regimes abroad.
And it's not just activists anymore, right?
Yeah.
This part of the PBS report really caught my eye. The business community is getting involved.
This is a major development. Usually, corporate America stays silent. They don't want to alienate anyone. But we saw a letter signed by over 60 CEOs, Target, Best Buy, United Health. These are huge Minnesota companies.
And they're not just offering thoughts and prayers.
No, they are pleading for de-escalation. The source says some businesses have seen sales drop by up to 80%. The city's economy is just grinding to a halt.
80%? That's catastrophic.
It is, and it's a huge shift. The business community is basically saying, this federal intervention is hurting our bottom line more than the crime you claim to be fighting.
It just feels like two different worlds. I keep coming back to that phrase from the beginning, mutually exclusive realities.
It's the perfect description. I mean, think about the Second Amendment aspect for a second. Alex Pretti was a gun owner. He had a permit.
Right, which usually makes someone a sympathetic figure on the political right.
It completely flips the script. Here you have Democrats outraged that a legal gun owner was shot, and the administration arguing that his mere possession of that gun made him a terrorist.
It just shows how deep the polarization has gone. Even a core principle, like the right to bear arms, changes depending on who's holding the gun.
Or who's doing the shooting. The facts don't matter as much as the team you're on.
So where does this leave us? We have a frozen city, a legal gridlock, soldiers on the streets. What's the bigger picture? Why does this matter to someone listening in, say, Florida or Texas?
Well, this is a test case. It's a test case for federalism in the 21st century. The administration has already identified other sanctuary cities, Chicago, LA, New York.
So if the Minneapolis model works,
if the federal government establishes that it can operate in a city without state oversight, can override local police, can ignore state investigations, then that model expands.
Minneapolis is the laboratory.
It's the laboratory, and if the state of Minnesota succeeds in blocking them, it sets a precedent that states have the ultimate authority to police their own streets, even against the president's wishes. It's a fundamental clash over power.
And it's terrifying to think the answer might be decided by whoever has more guys with guns on a street corner.
That's the danger. When the courts and the political process break down, violence becomes the arbiter. And we are dangerously close to that edge.
We started this talking about a standoff. But the more we've unpacked it, it feels more like a fracture, a break in the very foundation.
It raises the most important question of all. We talk about political polarization like it's something that happens on TV or on Twitter. But when two levels of government, state, and federal can no longer agree on the most basic facts, like whether a man was holding a phone or a gun,
And are willing to deploy armed forces against one another over it.
are we still looking at a political dispute, or are we looking at the modern definition of a civil conflict?
That's something I think every listener needs to sit with. We're going to keep tracking this situation as it develops. For now, stay warm, stay informed, and thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.